she said, I almost took a nap when I got home.
I wanted to. I talked to Carrie for a little bit, and I briefly later on now that we have an audience.
She has said that since my first meeting. Now I don't leave the house without her saying
Just because she says that you should take it lightly, right? You hear it all the time. So,
How are you?
there are people out there that want to keep you up.
You know that Dover mayor down there? You know what he does? They pay him I was talking to a young man who was thinking about running for office.
I understand.
And he asked me a few questions, so that's why I didn't get back until we and it's like gave me my learning experience. She said, I said, well, what does it say? But he hasn't been in office for over a year. And now he hasn't shown how he's being indicted. I said, well, when do you decide? Because, well, council's supposed to decide on this next week.
Microphone here.
I go, no. I'm part-time, I just have to before. He just, well, we have charter government, so we have a full-time city administrator that has all our business. We just have a very small thing. Oh, yeah. But I said, well, if he's getting 100,000, then he's doing a lot more than he's doing what you do. To get that kind of money. So, you know, it's kind of interesting when you're talking about that. Because I said, well, if they oust him, then you're president of the council. I said, oh, because the hyperlink to the agenda is council member.
Just, you mean you were on the top station?
Yeah.
But I said, well, if he's a councilman at large,
it shows him in the hyperlink on their app.
the one who a councilman. But correct me if I'm wrong, but let's see if he's from a ward.
Oh, absolutely.
And if he becomes mayor for the rest of the year, they have to appoint somebody
So that how you
from that ward. And then it could be the president of council who's after mayor now.
we got rid of license, or he's going to get some change.
Good.
To solve that.
So we got rid of the rental license.
Yeah.
Turns out that they
I'm so glad. When I was there, it wasn't open yet, so I need to go check them out. Okay.
Guys get the page.
Seems pretty controversial to me, but like, you know,
Wouldn't that be fun? I know, it's so swing, you know?
maybe there is something else.
Sure, go for it. You can do what is inclusive. Come on.
Sure. See that guy right up there with the glasses? He's the official signer.
Hey, Daryl, be careful. I think their classmates left early last week.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Polar bears?
I'm sorry.
Well, you know what our city motto is?
I'm sorry.
You know what our,
I used to live in it.
you know what our motto is?
Third.
Senior? Coming up on the end, aren't you?
I know what that's like.
Sure, like, yeah, I mean, every day is like numerous, but yeah, everything is really good.
Professional. No, maybe
How
not.
about
Maybe
you?
they're all in back.
Yeah.
So I did this. I started buying it.
It's like 15 minutes a day.
I know, I keep forgetting this.
Time to start church, so where there's a lot of superman or aquaman. And it was my own internal way of coping with the stress. I hate that.
I want both parents to roll.
You probably have viewers.
It is.
This makes no sense. You didn't think that Apple would have
No.
Okay. Do you have extras? I just need today.
Gonna need one today. Older, all this change.
pretty much like if it's not working, I'm not.
Yeah.
I think everything's moving forward. I still have the trophy that I need to finish. And Joe will let her tell me that I
Good. Good.
Oh, as far as tickets, I don't know. I'm sorry. Don't you go on as a,
I wish the committees are like.
uh,
Oh, really?
chair, maybe it's the way. She's going to join you by. Yeah. See, I want my chair, so I guess I'm going to take it from there. Oh. Like you're sitting on like something like
You know what I'm saying?
yeah, that's it.
You could switch
This is not normal, because usually my legs are like hitting.
That happens to me all the
Something
time.
is like different, but it's fine.
Switch on. Space.
Right?
Ben, did Stephanie join us on Zoom yet?
Join now.
Okay.
Stephanie, can you hear me?
Start about 1 minute behind, it's okay.
Yes.
Okay.
She's still
Been there, done that.
Been there, done that.
He's in meeting.
Cool.
I'll let you know.
All right, sweet.
Thank you.
Okay, you ready? I now call to order the Committee of the Whole on May 2nd, 2022. The time is 7 p.m. Ben, would you please call the roll?
Member Orr? Here. Member Matheny?
Here.
Member Holt?
Here.
Member Shroy?
Here.
Member Wire?
Here.
Member McLeaser?
Present.
Member Werren?
Here.
7 present.
Okay. Community and economic development.
Daryl, thank you very much. We have for consideration tonight a second discussion about registration of rental units. The purpose tonight will be to open the floor for questions or comments. And then, if it's council's will, to move this for the first of 3 votes. Let me begin, let me just take a step back. Does the administration wish to open the discussion at this point, or would you prefer to hear from council?
I would just note that if you look at your draft, there were some changes that were made to it based upon the discussion from the last time. So I would just make sure that you're aware of that some of the issues that you wanted to have in the event of like a hardship in particular on the registration process, if you had some sort of a discretion there that in the unique circumstances that someone could grant an exception to the 90-day requirement. So I think we've worked that in there for you. But other than that, we're open for any other comments.
Okay. Let me start then to my left with Mr. Orr. Do you have any questions or comments regarding this matter at this time?
Not at this time.
Mr. Matheny?
I have a few comments that I'd like to make. I am in support of rental registration. I think it's important to have that in place. I'm not in favor of the legislation as it's written at this time. I think what we have in front of us is 2 pieces of legislation tied into one, and that we need to separate those. I believe that rental registration needs to be for all rental units in North Canton, not just a select few. I think that the registration needs to be an online process for all of the owners, that they can go online, register, update, change, make their payments. And before we vote on that type of legislation, I would want to know what the cost of that software would cost the city. It's part of the process, and what is that expense going to be? I think that under the current legislation, with the inspections taking place in the fall, I still have concerns of coming out of this pandemic. It's proven the last 2 years that there are spikes in the fall, and I'm not sure that it's in the best interest to have inspectors going out into homes where they may not be wanted or there may be other issues. With illness, COVID, the whole gamut that brings along. It's concerning that we're only doing a partial registration. We should be responsible for all of the issues within the city, all of the rentals, the tax that we discussed about collecting income tax should be ensured that everybody is registered and everybody is paying their appropriate and fair share of the tax. And whether there are issues, nuisances, regardless of the rental unit size, should be addressed specifically and not partially. So if this legislation were separate into 2 pieces, a full registration of all rentals, and then tackle the nuisance side, the maintenance, and the safety side of the tenants, and how we tack that in terms of size or scope or ability through people can be addressed separately, but together, I am not in favor of this legislation.
Yeah, would like to respond, although I'm not here to debate policy with the council. Here to provide information. As far as, separating it into two separate pieces, separating the first part out would be problematic from a legal standpoint, because under a rental registration only program, you would have a court challenge of what value are you providing to the people who are registering their property. So ostensibly, someone could argue that there is no value to me as a property owner to register with you, therefore this is not something that would hold muster. So the part that is the part that makes it past legal standards, but also gets to the heart of the matter from our standpoint is the licensing part and doing the inspections. And so I mean that's not invented to get around it, that's just a byproduct of what courts have held regarding that. So that is the intent here, is why we have both pieces together. As far as COVID goes, if not now, when? There'll always be something. I mean, I think that as time goes forward, there will always be some sort of rationale. Somebody somewhere will address this on a political level. We see it all over the place. Just reading on my way here tonight, a governor candidate in Florida is wearing a mask on a plane because he thinks the science is that it should mask up, even though everybody else has a different opinion. But it's become a political issue, so I'm not quite sure that we'd ever get to a starting point if we held that out as a standard. It certainly made sense 2 years ago when we didn't know as much as we know now, but what we know now, not quite sure on that. And then as far as the cost of the software, it depends on what model that we end up going with. On the high side, we've seen about $14,000. On the low side, 7,000 to 8,000. It just depends on what the software is to do. You get what you pay for, and I'm not one to pay for something that doesn't give us the data analytics that we're looking for, and some of them just don't.
So what value is the registration providing the city?
I'm sorry?
What value is the current registration in this legislation providing the city?
It's the registration and licensing.
What value is it providing to the tenant or the landlord?
That it gives them, through the inspection process, certification that they're living in an environment that is safe from life safety issues. So bad water heater, bad furnace, not hooked up properly, landlord hasn't been in to inspect, don't know what the tenant has done. So it's both safety for the tenant, safety for the landlord. So, I mean, there was a list, I think you probably saw the questions. Chair of the committee, is that the case that was circulated?
I believe it was.
Yeah, the types of questions, the things that we are looking for, and making sure that all those issues get a favorable check mark. So I think it was, I don't know, like 2 sheets.
Yes.
I think it was approximately. And that had been worked on between the building superintendent, myself, fire chief, police chief, all the important things that we would want to look at.
That's the value they get from the inspection fee, correct?
I'm sorry?
That's the value that they get for the inspection fee?
And then, we've been sensitive to this in my discussions the last go around with the board of realtors, that, for instance, in a change of tenancy, somebody moves in, somebody moves out, there's a concession to them, we're gonna come back in, inspect, make sure that the tenant that's leaving didn't do something, unintentionally or intentionally, to the property that the landlord might not have inspected, so that we can give that a clean bill of health, or not, and that provides some value to the landlord in the event that there was an eviction, and perhaps there's an effort by the landlord to seek damages. So something like that is helpful, but to do that without an additional fee. In addition to, another concession was in the event of the sale of a property, that certificate of inspection could be transferable to the new owner and be kept on the same schedule. So those are some, I would say, values to the landlord, although they may not be primary, it could be considered incidental, but they were things that were negotiated.
Thank you. Mr. Story? Yes, thank you. I'm in favor of this legislation. For the first point, for safety. I think that rental registration would provide that guide for safety that doesn't currently exist. Number two, for the point of registration, not only to know where the rentals are, but also to potentially track them down for non-payment of taxes, which is a much worse problem than we ever imagined from some sample data that we took. Number four, I don't think it's an excessive amount that is being charged. I don't think it's going to be, if it is passed on to the tenant, it's a minimal amount. It is not, it's not like some of the other places around us that are cost per year on top of what they're doing on registration. I think it's cheaper. I think this is a good point to start. If people want to make changes, I think it's up to council to add part 2 to this. But administration has spent a lot of time on this, and I think they've drafted a good starting point of legislation. I think ultimately it would be great if we could combine and have everybody on one list. But I think it's too heavy of a lift to start with. I think you have to figure out what your community's made of, and there's got to be a starting point to it. And I think this is a great starting point. But I really do want to take a look at the taxes. I see it in my own practice, and I've corrected people, new clients coming in, that they don't feel that if they have, if they live in a township and they have a rental in the city, they feel that they don't have to pay taxes in the city for that rental. They don't understand it, and there's a lot of people out there that are like that. There's people that are using automated services to do their taxes that don't even scroll down to the local filing. They just don't even file local taxes. This carries over into rental. So those are my points.
Christine?
No, I'm in favor of this as well. Initially, I had some questions. I really want to be sensitive to renters. Not everyone can afford to buy a house in our school district, and I think it's important that we not force renters out of where they're living if the costs have been too high and that was going to really be passed on and was going to prohibit people from renting. Then I would have an issue with that, but the cost is very reasonable, and I think protects the renters. So I'm kind of, coming at it with support from that area. And then also we looked at neighboring cities who are doing this as well and charging more. And I just think gathering the data, like Matt said, I think we have to get the data before we can move forward with anything. We just need information.
Very good. Mr. McLeister?
Yeah, I'm in favor of it as well. I think I found myself, when we first discussed it, slightly over on the in favor side, but as I've done more research, talked with more people about the taxation issue, then I bet if I sat down with you and you enlightened me even further, I didn't realize that there is a possibility that a lot of these rental property owners are not paying taxes. So to me, that's huge. So I'm a resounding yes. Back on the safety side of things, I certainly see value in ensuring that our tenants in our city are living in safe properties. So I see value from both sides of things. I will add, I do support a point that Member Matheny has made. I do also agree that at some point we should be registering all rental properties, but I agree as President Stroya said that we need to start somewhere. I think it would be it'd be too much, too fast, all at once, if we just said we're registering all rental properties. So personally, what I would like to see is I hope that we pass this, and I would like to see a review of this at the end of next year, and provided everything is smooth sailing, I would like to see maybe the subsequent year, maybe 2024, bring in registration for all rental properties. But I do agree you have to start somewhere, so those are my thoughts and comments, so thank you.
Yes, one final comment that, since it was brought up now twice, but as it relates to, taking some of these on now and then a future council coming back with a policy corrective to expand this to other larger rental units. Another reason, I guess, why we started with just this size approach is also studying what had happened with the city of Canton. The city of Canton tried to start a rental registration licensing program, and they ran into a major issue in that they tackled everything at one time, and they found that their department was unable to provide the inspection in a timely manner. And that was challenged in court, and the court sided with the landlord that, yes, you're paying a registration and licensing fee, okay, we're okay with that, but you have to provide this value to them in a timely fashion. And their inspections were running months and months and months and months behind, and the court found that that was inappropriate. So that's a case of, perhaps biting off more than you could chew. They've since made their adjustments and hired more personnel or whatever it is that they did to bring their timing up, but that's certainly not what we're trying to do here. So I think I recognize that there's a lot to do here to start up a new program, and I hope it goes smoothly. And we will certainly take every effort to make sure it does go smoothly, but, stuff happens, and we have to be adjusted to that.
Can I flip that around then? If it's a size issue and a manpower and maintenance issue, what if we go after the very largest apartment complex to determine whether or not we can handle that, because it's all in basically one location, it's one owner, and the turnaround time and the inspections and stuff like that could be easily accommodated?
Well, I think in that respect, you're in my opinion, you're allowing the tail to wag the dog. In my honest opinion, I think the problem is from the life safety issues are with the units that we've identified, 8 and fewer. I'm not opposed to if council makes a course correction to include everybody, but I think, when we look at the larger units, we're going to find that because those have deeper pockets, bigger liability issues, that they largely keep their properties safer. In certain size buildings, the fire department already has access to common areas, not to individual units, but to the common areas, and we feel that this is the appropriate place to start. So I want to address where the problem is, and I'm telling you as your administrator that that's where the problem is. And whether or not council expands that, it's totally up to council.
How many, with our current staffing, how many people do you think we'll have to add?
Well, because we have Safe Built as our building, zoning, permitting department, they're going to be able to bring in additional staff as needed. So what's nice about that is it gives us flex staff. We get through it, whether that takes us 6 months to do it or 8 months to do it, or whatever the amount of time it is to kind of get through the surge. They'll bring in however many necessary people from other communities to help us with that. In the meantime, we are authorizing them to go ahead and hire one additional full-time person, which they are interviewing for right now, because we think that we know the need, just from nuisance inspections is up, and we need more help in that regard. But as far as this licensing and registration process is going, we met with the Safe Built leadership this past week again, and they have their plans in place to bring in however many is necessary. So largely, John, it depends on how good we are in identifying enough of these rental properties up front. We've reached out to people in the community to, let us know. I've been going around, driving around, looking, and, we're starting to catalog this. We pulled some data from the county auditor and that kind of thing. So it's given us a basis to start, and we'll see how many, voluntarily register when notified, or how many of them, end up wanting to drag it out. So I'm not trying to be evasive, I'm just trying to be honest that I don't have a specific number, but I can tell you that they'll bring in as many as needed.
Hey, Patrick.
Yes, Stephanie.
It's Stephanie. So, I guess that what I just want to say is I'm so glad you brought up Safe Bill. So when we were talking about this, and I feel like we've been talking about it for the past 10 years, I know Doug and some of the other past councilmen were always in favor of it. But at that point, I really think a lot of us thought, we don't have the manpower, the people in place. Since we've had Safe Bill, it's completely changed how we've done things, our collaboration with others, getting jobs done. And now you have that in place, and it just seems at this point it's the perfect time to do that for all the reasons that everybody mentioned. And I can appreciate what Dave said, and like, why aren't we going gangbusters on this? But I also remember what happened in Canton, and kind of saw them struggle, and it didn't go as well as I thought. But with Safe Belt now, we know we're in good shape, but I kind of like the timeliness, and as Daryl has said again and again, we can bring it back and change things as we see accordingly. So, that's it.
Thank you, Stephanie. I guess as I look at this, I'm reminded that probably over a third of our housing stock in the city is rental property. We know actually very little about some of it. And the real question in my mind is, do these properties adequately protect the health, safety, and welfare of the people who are renting the property? These are businesses. I do not know. To Stephanie's point, I'm willing to experiment. Find out what kind of data we can generate to truly understand and to protect those residents. To Patrick's point, I would remind those in the audience, and those listening, members of council, that this legislation, as drafted, is the product of a solid technical and legal review. It is the best that we have at this time. And I don't want to pretend to second guess the attorneys on this matter. We know that these issues have been litigated elsewhere, and that we have a plan that will, I hope, allow us to implement this project. What are we, Patrick, about the effective date is January 1, 23, correct?
Correct.
So we are probably 8 months out.
And we'll need all 8 months of it.
And we'll need all 8 months. Patrick, the administration, or members of council, the president, can ask for an update. And I'm sure Mr. Bureau will be happy to provide it as we move to that implementation date. But I think, again, as we look at this, the inability of communities to deal with their rental properties and to understand the forces at play has had catastrophic results elsewhere in Northeastern Ohio. I've often said that what happens elsewhere eventually comes to us. It's just a matter of when. And I would argue that one of my concerns as one of the old guys is that we're going to find ourselves like Cleveland or Akron, because they didn't identify what was occurring in the rental marketplaces early enough, and then they had real problems. Little stuff like lead pipes, for example. Do we have a lead pipe replacement program? No. What if our rental inspections say, hey, you do have an issue here. You need to get on the list for federal assistance. replace lead pipes. Marty, I don't think we do much on it right now, do we? We don't. My point. I don't think we do much on lead paint, do we? We don't. Probably not. So at what point does that become an issue for us? I don't know. But I would sure as heck like to have, Patrick's point, I would like to have some data to guide our policy. It's got to start somewhere. Mayor, your finger is pointing to the sky, so
I'd just like to add, if I may, I think this legislation, again, I think we've hit on it. It provides a benchmark for us to start. And I think you've covered the key items there about keeping things up to code. We're talking about quality of life, safeguards in our housing market. And of course, we have some people, I think, that are slipping through not paying their personal income tax or property tax. And that would be an avenue for us to help us learn about that. But I think the legislation provides a good benchmark for us to start and to work from there. And I like the idea that, and I'm sure this is what council would do. Of course, you're going to review this, somewhere along in the process to see where we're at. So just allow me to share my thoughts on that. Thank you.
And, Clerk, if you'd be kind enough to note in the calendar that the chairman of the committee would like to have this on an agenda in maybe November, just so we have a formal opportunity to kind of review the progress of this a couple months out. So I'll allow you to select the date. Are there any other comments or questions regarding this matter?
What is the chair's schedule
Pardon?
what is the chair's schedule for moving this legislatively?
I believe we need to have 3 readings. Mm-hmm. And I would propose, and I'm going to make a motion that we place it on the agenda for Monday night,
I'll second.
forthcoming Monday, and then we'll proceed accordingly.
So are we talking to the clerk, if you could give me some guidance on where that would put us if we followed a regular calendar?
Final reading would be on June 13th, and then the 30-day referendum period, there are 30 days in June, so July 14th would be the effective date.
Mr. Diorio, I would also remind you that either the president of the council or the mayor can call special meetings, and we could consider it on other dates if it is their pleasure.
Well, I will advise you that we will take that under consideration and let you know, but I would tell you that, from the standpoint of the administration, executing a professional service agreement for software is not going to be made until we know that the legislation is final and passed and goes into effect. So we're looking, you're pushing my calendar for sure.
Duly noted, and while I appreciate the authority that you've granted me, scheduling votes rests with the president of council.
We'll look at the schedule.
So I'll leave you two to work out the details. So there is a motion to proceed for a first reading on Monday night by Mr. McLeister. Revolt will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Let me do this.
Roll call vote.
I motion a roll call vote, or I'll ask for a roll call vote. Just ask. Roll call.
Ben, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Member McLeister?
Yes.
Member Wyrick?
Yes.
Member Shroya?
Yes.
Member Revolt?
Yes.
Member Matheny?
No.
Member Orr?
No.
Member Werren?
Yes.
4 in favor, 2 opposed.
I counted 5.
Or 5, yes, I can do math.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Okay, moving on to ordinance and rules. Okay, so I just want to make a note that these are going to, all these 4A through
G.
what we got here. So G. We are going to bring these back to committee in June, so nothing is going to be moved forward tonight. So this is gonna be all coming back. So, with that being said, John?
Ben, you wanted,
Thank you very much. So yes, right off the bat, as President Schroer said, we are not asking for any motions to move forward this evening. The hope is that you will take the next month, talk to constituents, get some feedback and clarity, and then we'll come back in June. And that's also for, to line up with the timeline of when to pass things to put on the ballot. So if you'll all grant me leave, I'm just gonna start going down the list, and please interrupt me whenever you have questions or concerns. So 4A, amendment number 1. This would alter the charter to establish 4-year alternating terms for elected officials beginning on January 1st instead of December 1st each year. For a little data color to this, 80.8% of municipalities in the country have staggered terms for their council members. 64% have 4-year terms for their council members, and 49.4% have 4-year terms for their mayor. So this 4-year staggered terms methodology seems to be tried and true pretty much nationwide, not just in Ohio. The mayor told me the other day, I believe that he is the only mayor in Stark County whose term is not 4 years. So we are kind of the odd duck out at this point.
how would that be divided up, Ben? Would it be the council at large and mayor on one election before award and another election?
Yes, so how this is currently written is exactly as Member Orr described it. So at-large and the mayor would be on one rotation, and ward council members would be on the other rotation, so 4 people up for election each rotation. And how the language is written to make that happen is, if adopted at the next municipal election, ward council members would still be elected for 2 years, and at-large and the mayor would be elected for 4. Then 2 years later, the wards would be elected for 4 years, at-large and the mayor wouldn't be on the ballot, and then we're off and running with 4-year staggered terms. So every 2 years, 4 people would be on the ballot. And then changing the start date to January 1st matches to our fiscal year, our calendar year, and pretty much every peer entity that I can find. Any other questions on that one? Alright, the next amendment alters the special meeting notice provisions, so try to take a little and give a little here. So currently, for special meetings, the clerk of council is required to hand deliver notice to all of you that there will be a special meeting, unless you have waived that notice, we have some other agreement, or if you showed up at the meeting, regardless of whether I gave you notice or not, that is considered proof that I did somehow give you notice. So this proposed amendment would replace all of those provisions with just a simple requirement that I must give you notice in writing for every special meeting at least 24 hours in advance, period. So this will allow me to send you an email or a Teams chat instead of this hand delivery with exceptions. There would be no exceptions anymore, but the method of delivery is simpler. Questions on that? Alright. Amendment number 3, 4C. This would eliminate, or yes, my agenda is wrong, sorry, I put them in the wrong order on my cheat sheet. 4C would be the legislative procedure. So this would specify differences between ordinances and resolutions. So the original intent is that resolutions would be much less permissive. So the language as it's written very explicitly limits what resolutions can be used for, but resolutions pass with just one reading. And so the reason we had asked for something like that was The two best examples I can give are whenever council appoints someone to a board, I would like to do that by resolution and have a clear written record. But that's something that is purely the 7 council members' decision and really shouldn't be subject to mayoral veto. Another example is something you guys are going to talk about tonight, actually, union contracts. So administration and the mayor have the right to negotiate them, and then under state code, you guys have to say by resolution whether the 7 of you agree with it or not. That really shouldn't be subject to mayoral veto because the mayor's who negotiated it, so he shouldn't be able to veto whether you guys say yes or no. It should be your own decision as a separate branch of government. So the intent is to make resolutions that legal function where you guys can express your opinion, but it's highly limited that you can't actually pass laws by resolution. So you can't impose penalties, you can't allocate money, you can't move money in the budget, nothing like that through resolution. In addition, the Charter Advisory Board also recommended lowering the number of readings for ordinances to 2 from its current 3.
So we have some questions about that. So technically, we could have a committee meeting, a special council meeting following the committee meeting, and vote through legislation without public input on the next council meeting.
So you're saying you have the committee and a special on night 1, and then a second night have another be done with it?
Right.
Yes, you could do that. I mean, we could, right now, also just not have a committee. The committee's not required by charter, so only the readings are required by charter.
Okay.
And to Mr. Matheny's point, I find myself in opposition to the 2-reading approach. 3 readings typically is standard for legislative bodies. I think 2 readings can be abused under certain circumstances. And in our business, optics matter. And I think we should be deliberative. Unless there's a true emergency, then we have to adopt something and move on. So I would encourage you as you shop this. I would only say this, is that this council and the previous council has been blessed by terrific working relationships. You have not served with truly incompetent people who shall remain nameless. But the potential for shenanigans is very real, hence the desire for deliberation. Just 2 cents.
I do like the option of a resolution being a single reading. So
Yeah,
that's-
resolution's fine, I
Yes.
don't have a problem with that. It's adopting ordinances under something like you said, where we do it on a committee, we meet on a Wednesday, we meet on a Saturday. You know, sometimes, and I will be the first to admit, as mayor, I did a Monday, I did a Thursday, and I did a Saturday, because I couldn't get an emergency on the East Maple water line. And we had to get moving. But we had plenty of discussion beforehand. So, we don't need to belabor it, we'll have plenty of time to discuss it.
Yeah, and it is certainly within council's power to decide what the final ballot language
Yeah.
says.
I just said it through.
Any other questions on 4C? Okay. 4D is the requirement that legislation be published in a newspaper. So this would eliminate that requirement and replace it with a couple different ones instead. So first, within 48 working hours of adoption, the full text of the legislation must be publicly available on our city website. Second, the title of all legislation, so it'd be an ordinance or a resolution, must be posted both in City Hall and here at council chambers for a minimum of 2 weeks. And then third, when we had legal counsel look into this, there is a Ohio Supreme Court ruling that if we don't publish in a newspaper, but legislation relates to a specific person, we must give them direct notice. So the third piece in here would be if council adopted legislation, the best example I can give you is a zoning amendment that directly affected a specific person or property, and we can ascertain who that person or the owner of that property is. We must send them a succinct letter saying, here's what we did, and then B, a full copy of the resolution or ordinance that affects it. Questions about those public hearings? 4E would eliminate the 2 remaining budget deadlines that are in the charter. So back in 2017, a charter amendment submitted by the full advisory board then specifically clarified that the fiscal year was to be the calendar year, and it eliminated 2 deadlines from the old tax budget process, but 2 deadlines from that old tax budget process are still in here. So the first one is that it says the director of finance must provide council and the mayor with a list of anticipated revenue for next year by May 15th, which is impractical due to the fact that less than half the year has gone by. And then the second one is that the mayor is supposed to submit the budget by June 15th of each year, which again is impractical as less than half of the fiscal year has gone by to make projections for next year. So this amendment would eliminate those 2 fairly unmeetable deadlines. Questions about that? Okay.
Hey Ben, no questions, but just, it's kind of crazy to think how long it's taken us to get these right. So, thanks for that, getting us on those deadlines that are actually manageable.
I'll thank Gina for pointing these out.
I agree.
So 4F relates to attendance of elected officials at council meetings. So in the charter, I believe it's Charter Section 5, there is a provision at which states at what point does absence become excessive, and therefore council could, emphasis on could, but does not have to, remove one of their peers from office for failing to perform their duty. Right now, that standard is 3 consecutive meetings. So as long as, so if I'm an awful council person, but as long as I show up to every 3rd meeting, I'm safe. So this would change that to be 5 meetings in a calendar year, which some of you already sent me the question ahead of time. How did I come up with 5 meetings? And so the 5 meetings is based off of the assumption that council will have roughly 50 meetings in a year, and that's based off of meeting records going back to 2014. So since from 2014 to 21, council has had an average of 53 meetings a year. That's, and the important caveat to that is that that's meetings, not meeting nights.
That was gonna be my question.
So if you had 2 meetings
So like
on
tonight,
one
you
night,
missed 2 nights.
that would count as 2 absences, not 1 absence, because you missed 2 meetings.
Can you repeat that?
So, as this,
So are you saying, in that case, so if you missed 2 in one night, you would only have 3 other weeks to theoretically miss a meeting?
Unless the following week had 2 meetings as well.
You gotta play the double headers.
Yep.
correct.
I mean, let's say you're on a 2-week vacation and you have two meetings, each of those just by chance. That's 4. And, you know, I'm looking at, and a lot of us, you know, I've been working now for 20 years. I'm in a 6-week window now for vacation.
Well, so that's why.
So I guess I'm a little confused.
So that's why I emphasize the could. So there is already language in the charter that this standard is for unexcused absences. So we're not proposing messing with that language about excused versus unexcused. We are just changing the standard at which it potentially kicks in should the rest of council choose to exercise it.
Do they have what excused absences and unexcused absences?
Of course not.
I was
What was
gonna
that?
say, every meeting that I've attended and someone's been absent, council has always voted to excuse that member, so 5 would never come into play.
True, that is true.
If council always excuses its members, 5 will never come into play. So this provision exists for the, you know, truly bad actors in the world who are not doing their job. But like I said, as it's written now, as long as I showed up every 3rd time, you could not use this provision against me. But obviously, if I showed up every 3rd time, I'd only be there a 3rd of the time, and am I really doing my duty as a councilperson?
You could show up every
So,
3rd meeting,
did
you could
you
have a
look at
30% absence rate. and still
amendments?
not
I'm
do
sorry,
the
I'm
job.
sorry, wait, we have 2 people
Like
speaking
you
at
said,
once.
where did you get the 5? Where did you get the 5?
So the 5 is based off of meeting records from 2014 to 2021. Well, go
Right,
ahead.
yeah, I get what you said, but I just don't understand how you came up with 5. So there were 52 meetings, there weren't 52 times that we actually met, but then where did you come up with 5 as a number?
So 5 out of 50 meetings would be 10. You missed 10% of all meetings in a calendar year.
Okay. So basically you're at a 90%, you're an A average.
If this was a test, yes.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good way to look at it, because we definitely have people that are going to spin this verbiage. So I think we have to be careful about that. And as we have people who are in their 20 and 30 careers, this could be spun really differently. And you also have, I mean, I know in our last council, we had people, and we definitely excused them each time, but it was brought up continually. And it was definitely more female-based, with people attending their kids' graduation events, soccer games, if people have work situations. And yes, they're all excused, but that is not the way it's portrayed.
Maybe we need to officially define what an excused absent is.
That's certainly an option that could be added to this.
Let's everybody think about that.
I would do it in your rules of council.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and honestly, I think 5, even if it's excused, 5 for us meeting 50 times a year or something, I don't think that's a lot. And granted, we don't have a lot of people that miss, but if somebody got sick, we've all had little things and they're excused, but easily you could be off for 3 weeks because of you broke a leg or were on crutches or something. And the option for Zoom and Teams is not always going to be available, unfortunately.
you know, just spitballing here. I've worked for my company for 10 and a half years now. I get 10 sick days a year. But as a full-time employee, that's what are we thinking, 20 working days per month, so.
Mr. Wait, Ben, can you ask her sorry. Thank you, I'm sorry.
No problem. So if we're figuring, what, 20 working days a month, that's roughly 240 working days a year if my cell phone math is correct. With 10 sick days, that gives me a 5% absentee rate. Personally, I think if we, one, identify what an excused absence is, that eliminates it, and I think 10% is more generous than my Fortune 500 company gives me. I think it's adequate.
Yeah, but you're not, but you have to add them all up. You have to add up your sick time and your vacation time, because that's what this is.
I thought we're just talking about sick time and vacation time. I didn't think we got vacation time as a part-time city
Well,
council
if it's,
person.
but it is.
Summer and Christmas
I mean, we
recess.
still have to be, we're required to be here in some format, where there is attendance taken. And so if, as me working at a company as well, I get 6 weeks, well, right there is 6 weeks. If you tack on to that, then 2 additional weeks for sick time, or if you're taking care of a family member, it does add up.
And maybe taking care of a family member would
Especially if
be,
we have 2 times.
We just really need to define
We need to define it.
whether we do it through rules
It's
and
still
that's
a
where.
burden.
So when I ran for council.
I'm sorry, I've been on council for 10 years, and this is something that is picked up, and it's very pointed, and I think you're making it more restrictive.
Well, when I ran for council, this being my first term, I knew Monday nights is council night. So everything else is pushed aside. And that's what my constituents would want. And I think serving the city, I understand sickness and all that, that does happen. But I will be here most Monday nights.
member Orr, I agree with you 100%. Sadly, earlier this year, I missed my daughter's band concert because it fell on a Monday night. I made a commitment to be here Monday nights. I think about the only thing that would keep me away would be a sickness, a company meeting where I'm required to travel out of state.
Plan
I wish-
vacation.
Maybe a vacation, but I think for the most part, we're planning on planning our vacations around our generous recess schedule. That's just my thoughts.
Thank you.
We'll come back to it.
Well, to all
How
the points, I
ironic,
think
she's
that
arguing this when
where-
she's not even here.
Come on, you know not to speak out of order.
To all these points, I think that's really where this isn't an automatic, you hit 5, you're out. This is, if you hit 5, and your fellow council members believe you've hit 5 because you're neglecting your duty, then they can consider it removed.
To your point earlier, this is a we could act, not
Yes.
we shall or must act.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And I get that. I guess I just to finalize it, I mean, you can look back at everybody's attendance records and everybody has been here, but honestly, after being here for 10 years, no, I'm not gonna miss a family vacation because of a Monday night. That's why we have each other, and that's why we're supposed to move forward. And Jamie and a number of you are new, and that's great. For those of us that have maybe been here, and maybe at the beginning, that's what you think, but that isn't the kind of, I guess, when we recruit new people, I don't want to tell them that. I don't want to tell maybe a single mom that may be amazing for one of these positions, like, sorry, you're going to have to miss that. We are there to make sure that we are representing the constituents. And someone, my gosh, Jamie, you could have probably come late that night. And that's okay. We just trust each other to know that the job still gets done. So I want to make sure that we are advocating for everybody and making sure that we maintain diversity in this council, and that clauses like that don't keep other people away from running for this office. We already know how challenging it is for people to run. And you all can look at my attendance record and note that it is just as good as everybody else's, and that's not what I'm fighting for. But I would hope that if you had a great vacation to go on, or something like that, that you would go on it and trust the rest of us. Life is short.
Anything else? I'll go on to the last one. And then finally, 4G would be to permit more frequent full charter reviews. So this sort of charter advisory process we're doing here is to use council's power to amend the charter, trying to get as much constituent input as we can along the way. Adding this clause would let you guys call full charter reviews more frequently than every 10 years. which was initially the path we were gonna go, but then we realized the charter, as it's currently written, didn't permit that, so here we are. Yes?
We have, the previous amendment suggested that we are going to eliminate the publication in the newspaper. You have retained that for the charter review?
That's,
Be
an Ohio,
published in a newspaper, is that
that's,
or
that's from the Ohio Constitution, so I cannot
Okay,
supersede it.
very good.
Can we add website to that?
Certainly, yeah.
I mean, if we're changing, we might as well change
I like it.
it. Add
It's
the
uniform
website.
as possible.
Certainly, we can, yeah, but we can't, there we can't eliminate publishing in the newspaper, because the Ohio Constitution requires it, and we cannot supersede the Ohio.
I was just a little curious who the Carter Review Commission was.
The advisory board, you mean?
It says Carter Review. I was just kind of
Jamie.
curious who the Carter Review is.
Yeah,
Is that Jamie?
yeah, it is.
Okay.
Jamie Carter.
You see that?
Oh,
Jamie Carter?
Typographical error.
Yeah, it's-
I also found just another error, under, actually it's in the PDF in section 1, as it said, under proposed charter amendment, City of North Canton, the first small type line, the proposed amendment to charter, oops, I hit my iPad. The proposed amendment to charter, Article 6, Section 6.04, removal from office. So I think, did you maybe carry something over from another one, or?
Yes, so the,
Okay,
because section 5 is the removal from office, so I must not have.
right, okay, yeah, I just didn't know if you caught that, so.
As I mentioned to some of you before, these will look substantially different when they come back in June. The first draft we wrote, one of the attorneys and I were trying to make the ballot language short and understandable. Unfortunately, with the second opinion, we've been told the ballot language must include all of the former language and all of the new language, so the ballot language is going to be really long for some of these, just because that's what we have to provide. So these will look different when they come back in June, just to comply with ballot language requirements.
Will we on our website provide an explanation regarding the change, much like you've done here in this paragraph? So a voter-
Cannot hear you.
So a voter,
You've already been warned, Chuck, come on.
It is a public meeting, it can't be heard.
It's a public meeting that we have microphones here. It's not a public meeting for your camera to pick up the sound.
My
We
camera
talk
picks it
about
up
this
fine.
every meeting.
Your audio doesn't pick it up.
Okay. Go on.
will we have a brief explanation, provide the rationale for the change?
We certainly can, with the caveat that we can't advocate. Once these are put on the ballot, we can't advocate
For or
it
against?
should, for or against. We can only put factual explanation of what would it do if it was adopted.
Fair enough. Fair enough. We'll leave that to the legal and voters. There we go. They're anxious to have something to publish.
That is all 7 of the amendments that have made it to you guys. If you have something else that you want to send back to the Charter Advisory Board, it would need to happen relatively quickly. As per the ordinance, the Charter Advisory Board ceases to exist on July 1st. So you have pretty much this month to send something back if you want to.
What would be about the latest time that could happen? With notice, we'd be given longer.
Our tentative last scheduled meeting was the second Monday in June if we needed it. So
Okay.
June 13th was the last one that we told everybody. Beyond that, we'd have to organize a special date and time with the members of the advisory board.
When would the extended verbiage on each one of these have to be done by?
Like when would we have to pass a third reading?
Not, well, the third reading, but when would the extended verbiage be given to us, I guess?
I will. Wayne and I will probably be done with it by the end of the week, if you would like.
I just wanna make sure we're on schedule.
I didn't have it for tonight because that determination that we would have to change them was made Friday, so I did not have time to rewrite them all for tonight. But we will probably be done by the end of the week. You're certainly more than welcome to come in or shoot me a text or email or something, and I'll give all the new ones to you.
Thank you for taking the lead on this.
Very well.
Okay, any other comments on this part? Okay. Moving on to personnel and safety. Dave?
Hey, well, I get the honor to bring this up, but the praise actually gets to go to the administration team and the hard work that they put together on bargaining with the service employees. They worked very hard at this. The communication between them and the service employees is excellent. So they were able to get through the negotiation of the contract. And I would like to turn it over to Mr. Diorio to kind of give us some of the highlights.
Thank you.
Patrick, may I just, before you begin your explanation, I think there were 4 things that struck me about this before Patrick begins to explain it that I think warrant our both attention and gratitude. The first is, you'll notice that in the language there is a quarterly labor management meeting in the agreement, which I think those who've been around the labor table understand that this type of initiative is key to good labor relations. The second is the incentivization of qualifications. We need these types of certifications that are included in the agreement to be incentivized, which is absolutely terrific. The third is Patrick's paid considerable attention to CDL, commercial driver's licenses. And for those of us who appreciate snow plowing, that's a critical certificate to have. And if you're going to be repairing water lines or anything else, you need it as well. And it's here in the contract and acknowledged. And I think the fourth thing that, which is a minefield, but you'll notice how many paragraphs have been devoted to it, is this sort of comprehensive drug and alcohol standards. Protect both the employees and the citizens. So Patrick, I think you've, to echo Dave, I think you've done a great job on this. So I'm going to kick it over to you.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to speak. We wish to emphasize with City Council that particularly new members and publicly acknowledge that this approach that we're taking now hasn't always been the case with City Council. So what I mean specifically is that the Director of Administration and the Director of Finance are negotiating these contracts. This started with the previous occupant of finance. This is my 8th contract that we've negotiated, and we've done this without the necessary expense of the past of having attorneys in the room running up the bill. We also recognize that with attorneys in the room, it tends to make it more of an adversarial negotiation, and everything then comes at a cost. So we felt that it's very strongly that labor sit across from management, you know, the people who pay and the people who have the authority to hire and fire, and to know exactly how we feel and to speak candidly and honestly. And I think that transparency has led to you know, very quick negotiations, because they start to feel a level of comfort and trust with the administration. I will say that this particular union, of all the unions, has had a more rough go of it. There's been extensive mismanaged oversight of this department that has created all kinds of hostility over the years. And we started to address that the last go-around contract, which was my first with this union, and now the second. And this is going very well. So the headline number out there for the percentage increase per year on a 3-year contract is 333. And that is no small concession to get that. We know that inflation is soaring, and we've seen contracts signed with the cities to the south of us at 666, and so 333 is great. There were some language changes that we've put into the contract that we feel benefits labor, but also benefits management. To highlight on one of those has to do with the time increments that you would take off or be allowed to take off for going to, using sick time or personal time or vacation time. They all had different minimum number of hours that you had to take. So if you just had to go to the dentist in the morning and you knew it was going to be less than an hour, and you ended up using vacation time for that, you had to use 4 hours of it. Well, that's 3 hours that we got to cover for somebody on overtime or do without. So we've standardized this actually throughout all of our contracts, but now with this collective bargaining unit, and that's in quarter-hour increments. It works better for management, it's better to administer on the finance side, but also then just in the practicality side. If you don't need to take 4 hours, or you don't need to take an hour of sick, you only need a half an hour to get your kid to the doctor and come back, or whatever it is, that makes more sense to us. The more time that we can have you here, the better. The Labor Management Committee is an outgrowth of our healthcare committee, and as you recall, the city was very forward-looking in getting our collective bargaining units to understand that we needed more flexibility with obtaining health care. That previously the collective bargaining unit spelled out, you need to have a $25 copay as part of the health care package. Well, today, as we've explained, those changes in the healthcare marketplace are such that, if you're in network, you don't even have a copay. So for us to go out and get a plan that had a copay in market actually costs more money than one that doesn't. And that was something that really wasn't conveyed, and Gina and our team sat down and really went over these things, and so they saw a benefit to having a healthcare committee. And then Catherine has expanded that to, we really should be meeting quarterly if necessary to talk about labor management concerns and not let them get to a point where it blows up. So we're very proud of that collaboration. We've tried to incentivize the members to continue gaining skill sets that benefit the city. That they're able to do more than just one particular task. There's a lot of things today that require, in this department, more licenses to be held, more continuing education to get. And as human nature as it is, you get more from people if they have more to offer, but sometimes they need a little bit of a push to get there. And I think that we give them a little bit rather than just limited. Right? Previously, if we had one person that knew how to apply mosquito spray, we had one person that could do it. And if they were out on vacation and all that other stuff, maybe it wouldn't get done. So it'd be nicer to have more people with the certification so that we never really have an interruption of service due to illness or retirement or something along those lines. The commercial driver's licenses, federal regulations have changed, and they're making this, I think unintentionally, very difficult for municipalities. I understand the need on the federal side to make sure that long-haul trucking is done in a safe manner, but that's not what we do. And to make it that the present cost to obtain a commercial driver's license is in the range of $5,500 to $6,500 to get it, puts us in a position, like all other municipalities, that you, if you don't have one, you're not likely to get hired because you really don't have a value to us. And so we've kind of restructured this contract to reflect that, how important that is, and that to reach the highest pay levels at this city, in this collective bargaining unit, you must have a commercial driver's license. And to get to the highest point, you must have a commercial driver's license Class A. And then the next highest level, you must have a commercial driver's license Class B. Absent that, you will not get to the 2 tiers that are at the highest. And so that's a way to incentivize people, but also to let them know with clarity what our position is on this. And the contract didn't have that before, and quite honestly was used as a means to arbitrarily, hold back members from advancement. And we think that contributed to a lot of the hostilities between this bargaining union and prior management of the city. So that's kind of the big, important picture of the things that are in the contract, money-wise.
Okay, thank you. I guess, once again, thank you for the commitment for your team to pursue this, for the collaboration with our most valuable asset, and that's our employees, making this a good working environment for them, which is good for the citizens of the North Canton also, and the communication. It really doesn't happen without communication from the beginning. So thank you, each of you.
Well, we thank the council, and we thank your leadership of the committee.
Now, this is going to be, I'm going to make a motion that we move this quickly as a resolution so that we can pass it on an emergency. One of the bargaining issues was putting that into effect basically immediately.
Revolt will move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So this will appear on the special meeting coming up. At this time, I'd like to introduce another matter which was brought to the council's attention at the end of the day on Friday. This will be for the Street and Alley Committee and relates to the eminent domain for the Charlotte Street project. Copies of the proposed measure will be on your seats. As you've seen that. Patrick, would you care to elaborate?
Yes. So, as you know, we have talked to council before about the traffic that will be on Charlotte Street as a result of a new school and as a result of Diebel expansion. And by the way, the steel girders are going up if you haven't driven by and looked lately.
Which was a great sight to see.
So we have been having discussions, numerous, for an extensive period of time with the owners of what is locally known as the Spitzer property. And we don't believe that those talks are yielding the result that we need in order to move this project forward on a schedule that is consistent with a school opening in the fall of '23. We have notified the property owners of our intent to file an eminent domain action to move this process along. And that process moves rather quickly when it's an eminent domain action that involves the expansion of a road, which is exactly what we're doing here. And so we need council to move on this so that when we file our legal action with the court, that this resolution or ordinance, however we're calling it, is part of that file, which would be this week.
Any comments, questions, council? Can I have a motion and a second to move the eminent domain item for Charlotte to the agenda?
Revolt moves.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And can I have a motion to adjourn?
Revolt moves.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Adjourn. So we have a couple minutes for.
I know, I feel like the air conditioning's on.
Yep.
What is that? Frank, you learned how to do that last week, remember?
Pull it down again while you were up.
Hey,
Last time I was in one of those 60, right?
65's good. Maybe
Yeah.
70.
Thanks, Frank. 60.
I think we're ready when you are, Matt.
Okay, everybody ready? Okay, I now call to order this special council meeting on May 2nd, 2022. Time is 8:16. Opening prayer, Daryl.
I ask you to bow your heads tonight. Normally, we pray for our citizens in the city of North Canton. However, this evening, I would ask that we request that the Almighty hear our thanks for the life of Judge Lee Sinclair. He served Stark County as a common pleas judge for 17 years, and his was a distinguished record. Almighty God, we are grateful for his service and his example. And we humbly ask you that you welcome him to the company of saints and provide comfort to his family and friends in their loss. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ben, would you please call the roll?
Member McLeister? Here. Member Wyrick? Here. Member Strine?
Here.
Member Revolt? Here. Member Matheny? Member Orr?
Here.
And Member Werner?
Here.
7 present.
Okay. At this time, members of the public wishing to address City Council may do so. Each speaker will be granted 5 minutes. As a reminder, the rules are posted on the screen to the audience's right. As this is a special council, topics of discussion will be limited to the items appearing on this meeting's agenda.
Chuck Osborne, 307 Fairview Street, Southeast, North Canton, Ohio. I'm going to take a stab and see if I understood what was just said here earlier. Are you adding this eminent domain action to tonight's agenda?
No.
You're not. Well, what did you just say you're going to add to the agenda?
The collective
The
bargaining
contract.
contract with the service.
That's already on the, it's already on the agenda.
Correct.
Okay, so what appears on this is the extent of what we're talking about. Is that true?
Yes. Correct, everybody?
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else want to address? Okay, moving on to old business. Can I have a motion and a second to read by title only, ordinance 20-2022?
Revolt moves.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Ben?
An ordinance amending the zoning map of the city of North Canton to reclassify the property known as Outlot 417 in the city of North Canton, Stark County parcel number 100100198 from office building to general business B.
This is the 5 acres on North Market Avenue in Washington Square. The zoning request was made by the Alma Company for this. Its plans have been reviewed favorably by the Planning Commission. No opposition has occurred at the public hearings. Minor technical issue regarding a fence has been addressed. And I think the general response from the public is positive. This is the third and final reading. At the previous readings, again, we have had no contrary opinion, a negative opinion. Are there any comments or questions from council on this third and final reading? If not, then I move we adopt the third reading of 20-22. So moved and seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to new business, can I have a motion and a second to suspend Council Rule 24 to allow consideration of what is now Resolution 42-2022 without a committee report?
Revolt moves.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And can I have a motion and a second to read by title only Resolution 42-2022?
Revolt moves.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Ben.
A resolution approving the collective bargaining agreement between the City of North Canton and the North Canton service employees as negotiated by the Department of Administration and declaring the same to be an emergency.
So this is previously discussed in our meeting, the contract between the City of North Canton and our service employees. The administration negotiated the contract. We do need to pass this on an emergency to make it effective immediately, as terms of the contract dictate. I think we covered all of it. Are there any additional questions for administration or anyone else? Seeing none, I make a motion that we pass Resolution 42-2022.
Revolt seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Can I have a motion and a second to suspend the rules of council requiring 3 readings?
I'll move.
Revolt seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And finally, can I have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 42-2022 under suspension of the rules?
Motion to adopt.
Revolt
Second.
seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And finally, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Revolt moves.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Adjourned.